Okay, everybody, welcome to this special meeting of the East Bench Community Council. It's Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, 7 p.m., and I'm recording this virtual meeting on Zoom to be posted later. Let's look at the agenda that I posted on the East Bench Community Council's website, which is www.eastbenchslc.org. Our first item is to welcome everybody to this meeting. It's a special meeting, so we have one item on our agenda, and it's the application that the Immigration Overlook project has made for a plan development okay from the Salt Lake City Planning Commission. My name is Amy Burrows. I'm the chair of the East Bench Community Council. The first vice chair of the East Bench Community Council is Anthony Wright, and he's here. The second vice chair is Brooke Carrington, and I believe she's here. I saw her. The secretary is Katie Moore. She's here. She'll be taking notes. The treasurer is Mark Overdevest, and he's not able to come tonight. Diane Rivera, Dennis Eyre, and Emily Lucht are the three at-large members of the executive board, the East Bench Community Council. And I've seen Dennis, and I don't know if I've seen Diane or Emily, but couple business items really quick. Our next meeting is next Wednesday. That's our regular meeting. So we'll hear from all of the regular cast of characters. The police department, the Salt Lake City Council, the mayor's office. That's next week at the same Zoom address. And then after that, we meet the third Wednesday of every month, May 19th, June 16th. Then we take a break in July and meet again in August. The East Bench Community Council Executive Board elections are held at our April meeting, which is April 21st, next Wednesday. So come back then at 7 p.m. if you want to vote in the elections. Okay, our first item about Immigration Overlook is Kelsey Lindquist. She's a senior planner for Salt Lake City Planning Department. And I want Kelsey to tell us about how the planning process works.
Thank you, Amy. I'm Kelsey with Salt Lake City Planning. I first want to thank everybody who has provided public comments over the last couple of months. There have been really detailed concerns and insightful analysis provided. I do read every public comment, and every public comment is kept for inclusion into the staff report, which will be forwarded to the Planning Commission. The project that came before last month and that is for discussion this evening is the Immigration Overlook. It's a plan development. It is a 12-unit condo development. It is in the plan development process because of the lot width requirement associated for multifamily development in the RMF 45. That lot width requirement is 80 feet and they do not meet that frontage. So they're asking for that frontage relief from the Planning Commission. Due to that lot width, the lot is considered to be a non-complying lot per the Salt Lake City zoning ordinance. And there are some development rights associated with non-complying lots. And so by right, a single family dwelling could be constructed on this property without Planning Commission approval. They would still need to provide all of the applicable analysis and information to ensure that that development is safe. This project is similar to the approved project that went before the Planning Commission in 2016. What's different is that a couple things in our code has changed or have changed. We have a new plan development ordinance that was adopted in 2018. We also have the East Bench master plan that was rewritten and adopted in 2017. I want to note that this current application has not been approved, hasn't been scheduled for Planning Commission as of yet, and no recommendation has been formulated by staff at this time. Just a little brief history for those of you that were not in attendance last month. The subject property was subdivided in 1977, which was approved and recognized as a legal lot by the city. Subsequent changes to the city code included slope restrictions, development on slopes greater than 30%. So those slope restrictions are located in Title 18. That's outside of the zoning ordinance. And per the advice from the Salt Lake City Attorney's Office, those slope restrictions in 1828 will not be applicable to this property. However, and this is a big however, the applicant has to provide information and prove that the development is safe and will not negatively impact any of the abutting properties or structures. And please note that at this time, the planning director has requested that the applicant provide the geotechnical study for planning to review. Planning believes that this study is crucial to be able to conduct a thorough analysis of the proposal and to ensure compliance with the plan development standards, as well as the policies for slope development noted within the East Bench Master Plan. At this point, I can address process questions. Other than that, the applicant is here to discuss the specifics of the plan development.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you. There was some information I hadn't heard before, that the geotechnical report is going to be, is required by the planning department before you make a decision to approve their planned development.
It's requested. Nick Norris, the planning director, has requested the report.
Okay.
The applicant still has the option to go forward to planning commission without providing that report.
Okay. If this application is not approved, they could still by rights build a single family home on this property. Correct. Okay. Does it meet all of the other setback things, like is it setback from the property line the correct amount and it's not too tall?
For the plan development proposal?
Yeah,
or
for plan development, yeah.
Yeah. Currently, it does meet all of the setbacks. I asked the applicant for a little bit more clarification on what is rising above the 45 feet in height.
Yeah.
We have some allowances that allow the extension of elevator bulkheads as well as stairwells to extend beyond a height limitation. And so I just need a little bit more information from the applicant, but as of right now, it appears that all the other requirements are in compliance.
Okay. And you said that they must prove that the building is safe for its occupants and for the surrounding properties. Is that part? Go ahead.
No, that's correct.
Is that part of the planning process or is that part of the building process?
Well, the planning director has requested that geotechnical report to be submitted to planning. As I mentioned, he could go forward to planning commission without providing that report if planning commission chose to approve this plan development, which I didn't know earlier. Plan developments are discretionary. The planning commission is not bound to approve a plan development.
Okay.
So it's a discretionary approval process.
Okay.
So if
that's different than like the ADU process we've gone through before, which is not discretionary. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yes. A lot of those standards are associated with state law for conditional uses. Plan developments are not.
Okay.
So say for instance, the planning commission still approved this proposal without the applicant providing an enhanced geotechnical study, that would be required upon building permit submission.
Okay.
So it would still be required, just at a different time.
Okay. And to be clear, this is being built on a lot that is zoned for multifamily housing, right? It's not open space. It's not part of a city-owned park or anything like that.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. We'll come back with tons more questions for you, Kelsey. Oh, I wonder if the legal issue is that settled, or is that still whether that slope, how steep the slope is, if that's a settled legal issue or if that's still to be determined or
I
something.
will actually allow Paul Nielsen to respond to that. He's in the audience.
Oh, is he here?
I'm
Okay.
here. I'm
Paul, do you
also in
want
the
to?
city council meeting.
Hi. Oh, I know. There's everything going on tonight. It's a weird.
It's all happening.
But our
It's all
meeting
happening.
started on time and in the right place, so we're a million miles ahead of ourselves than last week. Do you want to answer that question right now, or do you want to?
Yeah, it's so, I need to be careful because my client is the city, and we have made it somewhat public that I have formulated an opinion regarding the applicability of the 30% slope requirements. It is my opinion that there are rights in the property that predate the adoption of the 30% slope ordinance, and by law, the property owner has the right to proceed without the imposition of those. That is my advice to the Building Services Division, and my understanding is that they have accepted that advice.
So how much?
Hold on, Ken. Ken, hold on. I'll give you a minute. Paul will still be on later, but let me set a basis here for a minute, and then we'll have some answers. Paul, is there another venue in which there are residents here who don't agree with that assessment? Is there another venue in which that decision will be revisited, or is that going to require outside legal or something like that? Or
Sure. At a point when we're making a lot of assumptions right now. If this were to proceed to Planning Commission, and if it is approved by the Planning Commission, and if it gets to the point where the property owner submits for building permits, the building official will make a determination at that point. And if the determination is that the 30% slope restrictions should not apply, then that is a decision that will be appealable when that permit is issued.
okay, one of the reasons I just want to clarify to everyone here that one of the reasons why there feels like there's a lot of intensity in making public comments and getting answers right now is because our understanding is that there's not a public comment process later on. Once this gets past planning,
Yes.
the commission, if they approve it, then the public doesn't have any more input. So that's why a lot of questions feel like they need to be answered right now. Is that not true, Kelsey? Or is that not true, Paul?
You're correct. Yes. There generally is not a public input process when it comes to submission for building permits.
Yeah.
So I completely understand why people are expressing the concerns now, and that's fair.
And Paul, is the building official who make that decision, is that an employee of the
Yes.
city?
Yes.
Like
He's also the director of the
inspector or
Building
something?
Services Division.
Okay. And does he make that kind of decision for every project?
Yes.
Okay.
Not every project has 30% slopes to deal with, but the building official or the people that he designates to make those calls on building permits, they will make the decision whether to issue a building permit in every development application. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Let me clarify. There's a question in the comment about, will everyone else be able to answer questions? Yes. I just want to get some kind of basis out there, and then you will be able to ask questions. So far I have someone on an iPhone with a hand raised to ask a question, and I have David Lita is number 2. So if you want to ask a question, either raise your hand the way that Patrick explained in the reactions box in the bottom right-hand corner, or if you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *9, and we'll call the people up in the order that you raise your hand. So the next thing I want to talk about is the East Bench Community Council's role in this project, because I've had a lot of emails, and I've read them all too. I'm not an expert on a lot of this stuff. I do have a geology degree, but I am not a building expert. I'm not a geology expert. I'm not a planning commission expert. But let me tell you what the role of the East Bench Community Council is in this process. We're in our bylaws outlined that we are going to talk about and bring to your attention issues that affect our community, and this one definitely does. And then there's also, we are the recognized organization for this geographies, and that's why Kelsey, I think by rule or by law or something, notifies us, and we have 45 days to give our official response. We have 45 days to gather comments from our residents and synthesize them and give them to the Planning Commission. We have a chance to speak in front of the Planning Commission at the day of the public hearing. We get 5 minutes to speak, where other audience members, residents and stuff get 2 minutes. So it's a big deal. But I also want you to notice we don't vote on this. The East Bench Community Council does not have a vote to say whether we approve or like this project or anything else like that. It's the Planning Commission alone gets to vote on that. So that's one thing. I can't vote for or against it. I posted this letter from Kelsey asking us for input, and the role of our group is to inform the community of the project and solicit comments and concerns that you have with the project. I've passed on comments that I've received. I've read them and then passed them on to Kelsey so they can be part of her official report, which goes to the Planning Commission. The deadline for us to make our comment is April 12th, but Kelsey said that she is accommodating this meeting today so that we can make our public comment. And by our, I mean the East Bench Community Councils. Public comments can be made right up until the day of the public meeting, and they'll go in the staff report. So you can continue to make those at the website, the online open house, which I've given a link to in that email that I sent today too. That's public comments can go up to there. The comments from the East Bench Community Council, and then also Sunnyside East is the other community council. And I've reached out to them, and they just, I invited them to this meeting. I'm not sure if anyone from there is here, but they, I don't know that they've had a special meeting or anything. So we need to submit our comments about what issues are raised at the meeting and whether any suggestions were made. The number of persons that attended the meeting, and I have right now 51 people attending this meeting. Whether a vote was taken on the matter, and if so, what the vote tally was. We decided not to vote on this issue. And that doesn't mean that we're giving up a vote that we have. We don't have a vote on the Planning Commission, whether to say to approve this plan development application or not. The East Bench Community Council doesn't have a vote on that. So we're not giving up a vote. We're just not taking a vote today, because I think we can easily say that the overwhelming comments I've seen are that this project has some people have concerns about it, and it's not just a rubber stamp. We think it's great. The other thing I include in that letter is the approval criteria for the plan development request. And the East Bench Community Council Executive Board has decided that we're going to make comments towards those approval criteria. So if you have a complaint or a concern, I want to point that to a point on the approval criteria. For example, there's a section called Design and Compatibility. It's section C. And number 1 says whether the scale, mass, and intensity of the proposed plan development matches the neighborhood. And I feel like some of you are saying it doesn't. It doesn't. Property of that scale doesn't fit on the hill. So that's the kind of comments that we're going to make. So I would appreciate too if you make comments today, if you can help point them towards which one of those approval criteria your comment goes to. If you can't, then that's fine. I'll just figure it out. Any questions about East Bench Community Council's role? Oh, well, let me tell you what next steps are. So next steps, we're going to write an official response, like our official comment on this project that kind of takes all of the comments that we've received tonight, last month, I'm sorry, all of the emails that I've received, and kind of shares those comments and concerns, groups them together and shares them with the Planning Commission so that they can see what kind of things we're worried about, what kind of things we're asking about. And then we can go to the public hearing, which has not been scheduled yet, like Kelsey said, and say, specifically, these are the things that our community is worried about. So absolutely, we can take a stance, and that stance is driven by the comments that we receive on March 17th, the ones we'll get tonight, and the ones that have been emailed to me. So East Bench Community Council is here to listen to you and to share that, to share what you're saying with the people in a useful way, we hope. We think that's a good tack, and that's the one we're going to do to address those points. Anthony, would you post that? There's a link to that. That letter is linked on our website, and Anthony's going to put a list to the approval point to the. Do you know what I'm talking about, Anthony? Do you know what to post? Put it in the chat so people can look that
Yeah,
up.
the approval criterion.
Yeah,
I
the
think
like
we put that
form.
in
Yeah.
an email, right?
Yes.
So Amy, I've provided my comments directly to Kelsey. Do I have to provide my comments to you as well?
No, you don't have to, Ken. If they've already gone to Kelsey, or if a comment that you want to make is not being, doesn't seem like it's being addressed today, then you can just say it to me in this meeting today, or you can send me an email.
I've already made my comments to Amy or to Kelsey, so she's on the hook.
Kelsey, yeah, Kelsey, that she's very good at that. She collects all of that kind of stuff, and that's her professional job. So if you send it to Kelsey, she's got it. Let's see, the next thing let's do, I expected Chris Clifford. Hi, I expected you to be at our meeting in March, but you weren't. So now you've received, I know that he's received the change.org petition, which has had several questions in it. You may have seen the minutes from our previous meeting. Today I saw that I got a list of kind of answers from Chris Clifford about some of the things that have been raised. And I shared that in the email today. So you maybe have seen that letter or can find it in your email. So Chris, this is your turn to explain your project to us and kind of address some of the issues that you've already heard about. And then if you'll stay with us, we'll let you answer questions from the public.
Well, let me first acknowledge that I am happy to be here. I was unable to make that March meeting. It sounds a little exotic, but I was in Maui taking care of a large project that was underwater. Maui had significant flooding last month, and we lost a large portion of our project that I was trying to recover. So having said that, I don't expect any sympathy, but nonetheless, I apologize for not making the March meeting, but it was unavoidable. We came to this project several years ago and proposed this to Planning Commission back in 2016. And I think most of you are aware of that. We would have proceeded with that project, and we were in the process of getting through the permitting process in 2017. And we had some health issues in our family, so I had to put that project on hold. Since then, things have quieted down, and we are coming back to this. The project has not changed. The elements of the project are the same as what we had proposed back in 2016, notwithstanding the concerns raised. Many of those issues still remain. The slope issue clearly is the dominant and perhaps most fundamental of all of them. One of the things to keep in mind as it relates to that is the fact that we have a geotechnical study. It doesn't meet the current standard as it relates to how current the slope analysis, soils, geotechnical seismic study was completed. So we are in the process of having that updated by Bill Gordon, who was with AMEC back in the early 2000s, when this project was evaluated for, in the context of another previous project. But in that context, and I think Kelsey, that is available on your website, is it not, for anybody to review?
I can make it available. I'm not sure if it's in Acela right now. It is in Acela with the previous plan development, but I can put it under this
Okay.
petition number. And Amy, I can email it to you as well.
In that context, the study was done principally to evaluate a smaller footprint of a smaller building. But the soils are the same. The seismic analysis is the same. The geotechnical loads, the vertical loads on the particular site are changing. And of course, as we get into that permitting process, the permitting process requires a very significant and detailed study as it relates to the exact footprint of the proposed building. So as we get into the final design of the building, the analysis that will be done will be consistent with that design platform, if you will. But if you think of this hillside as a slope in its current state, with vegetation on the site, subject to the normal, call it the elements that would have effects annually: snowfall, trees, old vegetation degrading, animals on the site. You're going to get the natural erosion that would exist on any hillside of this type. And with the replacement of a natural slope with an engineered retaining system, and what we tried to do was evaluate this in the context of what would be the best solution to stabilize the hill. And if you've looked at the plan, you'll see that we've tried to, in effect, reflect the natural grade of the site with a stair-stepped architectural platform, which would enhance, in fact, the stability of the hillside. And in fact, the geotechnical studies that were done previously strongly suggest that the hillside stability improves with the building in place as opposed to its natural vegetated state. Now, I'm only suggesting this as a point of reference because you can all read the study if it's put up on the site. But I just point that out because a lot of effort was made to be sensitive to the natural hillside and the slope that exists. And then together with that, being sensitive to our neighbors. We could have gone a little higher with a little different situation with blocking views. We decided to go down the hill as opposed to up, and preserving those views and vistas of our neighbors, as well as providing for a hillside development that would, in fact, as I'd mentioned before, stabilize the hill in a stair-step fashion, as opposed to a single footprint with a vertical building that would be a standalone. The only other concern I would raise that may be a point of reference in the future that was raised in the comments was about the parking and a few other things that were, I think, minor considerations. I just wanted to point out that we have all of the parking offsite. No on-street parking will be disturbed. The access, point of access as a joint access of the same driveway as Oakcrest Gardens. And so the 4 parking, street parking spaces are going to remain, and none of the landscaping is going to be disturbed because the entrance comes off the driveway, and at a point of about 65, 70 feet down the drive, that's basically when the project begins with the parking entrance, which will be, of course, a very nice architectural statement. Something that would be, from a point of standing at the end of the cul-de-sac, hardly anybody will recognize that the building is even there. So we try to be good neighbors. And just as also a point of reference, my intent is to make this my home with my wife. We're empty nesters. We have a number of friends on the hill. We've been anxious to have this our home for quite some time. So we want to make sure that we reflect the wishes of the neighbors, and that we produce a product that you could be happily accepting of, and that we can feel comfortable in as well.
Can I speak?
Ken, I'm gonna run the question and answer. We're on to that right now, but I'm gonna run it. If you want to speak, Ken, I'll put you in line. You'll be after David Letta. David, am I saying your name right? David Letta, I think. So Ken, you'll be after David. Our first question is from Ed Blake. I think that's Ed.
Thank you. And believe it or not, I'm not Linda Blake, so I'm just using her computer tonight. As someone that is involved in building, when I look at this slope, I don't see how you're going to get equipment on a slope like that to do an adequate geotech. The geotech that you're giving us or speaking to did, I believe, one boring on the driveway at the very top.
At the east end of the property, right?
Which is not going to give you valid data on that slope, what you're dealing with on that slope. We've had people with PhDs provide letters with concerns about what basically this slope consists of, and that it is likely a previous slide area. And that gives us great concern. I don't think you can get a report off of a slope like this that is going to give any of us any confidence. Maybe you could speak to that.
Could you better describe what your concerns are about actual testing of the site?
How are you going to get borings that are in other areas of that slope? The machinery won't go into a slope like that.
Well, we can cut temporary roads in at an angle that will allow for a wheeled boring apparatus. This was the same apparatus that was used. Well, it's been updated obviously, but it's the same apparatus. It's you can haul it in on a small dozer, and we can take 4 or 5 boring sites, and of course sampling sites from the west end to the east end. So that's
my understanding is you can't.
It's all part of the bid that we got from Gordon Geotechnical.
And I've used Gordon Geotech before, but so you're going to have to come in from the top, is what I believe, because the water, and you don't really have an easement to come across that anyway. So we're going to get to the point where you're cutting roads on it just to find out if you can build on it. Correct?
Temporary, yeah. We'll restore it. Rough roads, just enough for heavy, some small equipment to get in there.
Okay. I still have my concerns, but okay.
Okay, yeah. Well, we've developed a couple of projects up in Alta. You might be familiar with the Pineview Lodge that was redone recently. We had some fairly significant impacts on the old site, taking the old lodge and actually doubling it in size and putting in a new pool. And anyway, we're used to hillside. We were involved with some of the Deer Crest projects on the Jordanelle side of Deer Valley. We're quite comfortable with hillside.
You're dealing with different thing though. You're dealing with rock.
Oh yeah, you are. But my point is, in terms of how you develop, how you construct, how you process, it's the same. It's a similar kind of arrangement. Yeah.
Okay, David Lita, you're next with your question.
Thank you for recognizing me, Amy. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Great. I don't know if my question is best directed to Mr. Clifford or Ms. Lindquist. but it has to do with the general public health and safety aspect of the approval process. And it goes specifically to the access to the property. I've walked that property. I don't live in one of the condominiums, but I live in the neighborhood. And my best recollection is that the road access that you're proposing, Mr. Clifford, is currently a one-way road with the access going up the hill, not down the hill. I don't know if that's a one-way road because the city has designated it as one-way, but if you were to try to access it from the current cul-de-sac, it would be a wrong way to go down the hill toward your project. So my question really has to do with what is going to be the access and will it be adequate, not only for the residents, but for fire and police access in the event of an emergency, either in the project or near the project. And I'll take it offline.
Well, I think I can respond to that. I think the road you're referring to as a one-way road is actually a private driveway, and it is an exit. It's presently an exit driveway one way. When that driveway was put in, it was put in the context of a shared easement. Half the road is actually on our property, and the other half is on Oakcrest Gardens side. And there was an agreement that at some future point in time, when any development was proposed, that one way would be converted as a two-way. Now we have traffic controls. The first 35 feet of that drive will be a two-way, and then it will go right into the portion of our parking deck. And so there's going to be some, again, some traffic mitigation mechanics, if you will, that will allow for two-way for just that front section.
Well, and Kelsey, I thought, did you have some comment about the traffic and roads in an email I saw earlier today?
There was a public comment regarding safety along a road further to the
Oh, right, a road further down.
yeah. And so I forwarded that to the police reviewer for planning and to transportation. I can speak to the fire and safety requirements. I just received the fire review comments this afternoon, and fire suppression will be required for this development.
Yeah, and our intent was to sprinkler the building anyway, and we'll have standpipe type system that will provide for that.
Kelsey, one of the other questions is if you had to put a hammerhead driveway in so that fire trucks and emergency vehicles could get in that.
Yeah, and the fire reviewer did not stipulate that any additional vehicular access would be required for fire trucks. It's the fire suppression. So
Okay.
because they can't meet that access width requirement, they'll be providing the ease through a fire suppression system.
And,
Okay.
and just so you understand too, we're also, the structural engineering of the deck, of the parking deck, will support a 70,000 pound fire truck. So they can come in and then they can back out. And
Is that how big fire trucks are? I don't even know. I've never asked a fire truck how much they weigh.
Well, it depends
How
on
old are you? Right. Hey, so do you have to take out some of the parking spaces in that cul-de-sac right now?
No.
So, okay, because there are, I thought that a couple of the spaces for visitors to the adjoining property to the east maybe was in that driveway, but no, you're not taking out
No.
any.
The only change, we're going to widen the driveway on the south side of the driveway, just so that we have enough space for actually two cars to go by one another, but it doesn't affect those parking spaces as they presently exist.
So you're not increasing the number of entries or curb cuts or anything like that on the Donner Way circle, right?
We're widening that, but only on the south side, not on the north side where the parking presently exists.
So this isn't adding an additional in or out to Donner Way, because that was
No.
one of the concerns.
No,
The other thing is that you have it's a 12 unit building, is that right?
that is correct, right?
Okay, and that circle already services Does anybody dare to throw out a number of units that circle already services? 240?
Oh, no, that, well.
The circle, I mean, like the buildings that are already accessed on that circle, in and out. I don't know, 120? I'm guessing. Does anybody know those 3 buildings that are right there? Do the math real quick, Jonathan, I think you know.
I mean, for context, I mailed just under 600 notices. And that goes to property owners and tenants, so.
Okay. So an increase of 12 units is not a huge increase to the properties that are already serviced on this circle. Okay, that makes sense. Ken, your question is up next.
So I heard, notwithstanding all the platitudes from the developer, I heard that there has been no geotechnical survey conducted on the property. Yes or no?
No, there have been three geotechnical
And
seismic.
what were the dates?
Oh, the dates were 2001, 2002.
So we're looking at more than what, 18 years? And are you committed to do a proper geotechnical survey of the property from the east to the west, north to the south?
I think that was mentioned earlier on. In fact,
Now, this is just a yes or no question. Are you committed to do it?
yeah, whatever's going to be required by the
That's it.
city as it relates to the permitting process. Yes, we're committed to that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Ron McKee, you're next.
Yes, my question is about the seismic hazard and liquefaction evaluations. I have a reference here from Stephen D. Bowman, PhD, PEPG, Geologic Hazards Program Manager at Utah Geological Survey. He states that for a structure of this magnitude, you would want a PSHA performed to accurately determine the ground motion at the site. Basin effects during earthquakes is not well understood in Salt Lake Valley. And on top of that, if you do a PSHA, you should also do an Ashley. Are you familiar with those seismic studies?
No, not particularly, but I'm a geotechnical study that was done back again in 2001 installed with the boring. They installed seismic sensitive instruments, and they produced basically the equivalent of like a 5.4 earthquake, and then measured that in the monitoring that was done elsewhere on the site. And that study was done and included as part of that overall study of the geotechnical and soils work.
Did
No,
any
I'm not-
residents
I'm
feel
not-
that?
Code. I'm not familiar with the study that you mentioned. No.
Well, frankly, I read that study from 2001, and it really lacks a lot of credibility given that the borehole was 112 feet deep,
Correct.
114 feet deep, and it started at 90 feet above where the foundation of this building is going to be. So you take and figure that you're doing geological studies with about 20 foot of soil sample, potentially, even soil samples that are farther east than where the building will be. But my next question is, so you can go in and cut a road and destroy some of that old growth forest out there, which you cannot replace before you even get a permit to build on it. That will scar that hill forever if you're not allowed to build after you do your geological study. And I just find that really disgusting, in all honesty. Thank you.
Well, we'd like to have the city take the study that we presently have as evidence that the site would, prepare, rather than, if you will, scar the hillside.
Every geologist who has read that study, and there's been 4 of them, has said that study was inadequate and not up to date. We have new information on the valley about earthquakes with our
Yeah.
last one last year. And we know that there's a significant difference now that we didn't understand before. And a 20-year-old study is not adequate and cannot be accepted to proceed with this building.
We agree that there's need for a additional seismic study. The soils haven't changed. The analysis on compactability of soil, the vertical load capacity of the site, but we do agree that there's needs to be updated seismic work.
Okay, this is Amy. I want to mention one thing really quick on the approval criteria for the plan development request. There's an item about landscaping here, and item number 1 says, whether mature native trees located along the periphery of the property and along the street are preserved and maintained. So the truth is that this piece of property, it seems like open space to us because there's no building on it and it's connected to other open space, but it is private property. And the requirement for building a new building there is they need to maintain the mature trees that are on the periphery and along the street. That said, this neighborhood has already kind of been burned by a developer who built cut a big road into the side of the hill, kind of uphill from where you guys are considering, made a big road into it, and then didn't build the building. And so there's a big road cut into the side of the mountain that just it is a magnet for people that are fooling around.
Right.
Causing
No,
problems. And
I'm aware of that site, and it's ugly. It's not a neighborhood asset, certainly.
right, so there's concern that if you cut streets in or cut down some of the trees or start the project and don't finish it, that there'll be another one of those in this neighborhood. Is there anything you can say to? I don't think that there's I don't know that there's a regulatory way to prevent that from happening or to like post a bond for recovery if that does happen, or is the neighborhood just left with a streets cut into a hillside that right now are trees? Anybody?
Well, I'm a believer in counting all the costs before one starts to build. So we won't build until we actually have all the financing in place and our equities in place. There are bonding requirements that the city has. That of course will meet all the bonding requirements.
Okay, who's next? Jonathan, it's your turn.
All right. Hey, Mr. Clifford. My name's Jonathan Duncan. You don't know me, but I've spent some time digging into this, and there is just an elephant in the room here. I would like you to describe as in detail as possible the understanding you feel you have with the city's attorney that enables you to not abide by the relevant health and building codes, especially those related to slope. So Mr. Nielsen said earlier that this is just kind of something that he can decide. That's not the way this works. The mayor can't unilaterally say the codes are applied here, not there. Nobody in the building division can do that, And so I'm very, very interested in understanding how this is working, because the whole legal undergirding of this project is suspicious. And if you can describe to me, what is the conversation? How are you saying, that there is like 18.28 is very, very explicit. And incidentally, there's no grandfathered exemption to this. Had you applied prior to your ownership of this particular parcel back in 1993, if there was an application put in, it was filed, it was acted upon, that would be a grandfathered project. But we're 20 years later, and you have not gone through the full permitting process. And so if you just, save us some time here and really, address this issue, because I think this is this is one of the things that is kind of at the basis of a lot of our concerns. The city has not been forthcoming. I would like to hear from you. What is your understanding about why the health and safety codes don't apply to your project?
Well, we're not trying to get around anything here. On the basis of what legal precedents have established, we're not asking for anything else that was not previously granted, and that's what the basis of our application is. That we're just simply following the protocol that was established when we acquired the property. Nothing new. No, nothing new has been brought forward to suggest anything different than what was previously approved. There was a lawsuit that the previous owners prevailed on that established that precedence, and that legal argument is on record. So whatever's on record, we're simply pursuing that record.
Hey, Kelsey or Paul, if you're still here, can we find out about that?
Find out
the
about
previous
what?
lawsuit?
Previous
The
lawsuit?
previous lawsuit?
Right. My understanding is that it was in the early 2000s, an approval by the Planning Commission was challenged, and the courts upheld the city's decision.
It was
I haven't
challenged
read
by,
that. It was challenged by neighbors.
in what year? Tell me again, I'm sorry.
I want to say it was early 2000s, 2001, 2002.
Actually, I think it was 2006, Paul.
Here we go, 2006.
It's been a while since I've read. There
Yeah.
was an unpublished opinion that was authored by, I think it was the Court of Appeals, and it's been a while since I've read it. So yeah, my facts are not accurate, but there was a lawsuit and the city prevailed.
Okay,
I'd like to hear a little bit from Jonathan again. Did you have any further comment that you wanted to follow up on?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Mr. Clifford. I appreciate that, because I was kind of muted prematurely, because that is not sufficient, in terms of an answer, because the precedent, the lawsuit, I've actually read the lawsuit you're referencing. It had nothing to do with slope or zoning. It was specific to a procedural, they were claiming that you hadn't, not you, but the previous developer didn't have the proper paperwork, and they had avoided the, there was it was a technicality. It had nothing to do with code. And so the question I'm asking is this parcel is being granted something unusual. And so I understand from my robust correspondence with the city that this is an unusual circumstance. They're giving you leeway because the lot was platted in 77. But if this was any other, you don't have a grandfathered, you don't have a vested exemption. That's not something that you are legally working under. What Mr. Nielsen is doing is he's finding some case law that is very unusual in a circumstance like this to do a workaround based upon city code. And that can be challenged in court, easily. But my question is, I want to know if you have some understanding. What's the correspondence? Do you think you're getting some sort of break?
No, I have. And Kelly.
Okay, so Clifford, Mr. Clifford, I'll end here and I'll let you go on. And please just give a thoughtful answer, though. You know that the city codes relevant to slope are you're wildly out of code right now. Like, we're not even close. And so if you took this application today and presented it, you wouldn't get through the door. With that 63-degree slope on your parcel, that's a non-starter. But somehow the city attorney is granting you something unusual. And that's what's making us a lot feel like there's something that we don't fully understand, and there might be some sort of backdoor deal or what, because you're building on a 63-degree slope when the current code prohibits developing on 30 degrees or more. And so something there is not feeling right to us. And if you have an understanding, you could, educate me, us, on how this is working. And I'll take your response. Thank you.
Have you looked at the McNeil topographical survey?
Yeah. Though I've gone back and forward through your application. I know I presented your application last month. And I worked through the site design, I worked through the slope analysis, I worked through the 2001 geotechnical report, which was always, you keep using that as an example, that was a preliminary review. It states in that further investigations will be required. That is not the end of the story kind of a document. And you know that, right?
Yeah, we agree. As it relates to the geotechnical, let me just make, as far as the public record is concerned, very clear. This was preliminary, and all it established was a general sense of what the problems were with the property, and it did suggest additional study. Now that comes into play when we actually have all the detailed design for the building, and we want to put the building in a particular location with a particular load. We know what that load is. Our structural engineers identify all of the components of the building and how it's situated on the site. At that point, then the geotechnical study will then validate whether there's supportive evidence on site or additional infill or engineered fill needs to be brought into play. So as it relates to the study that was done 20 years ago, we're not holding to this as the final study or report.
Well,
That we
but maybe
recognize the
Mr.
need for additional reports.
Maybe Mr. Nielsen can weigh in here too, because it doesn't sound like you guys have fully coordinated on this. I want to hear about why the codes aren't particularly relevant to this parcel. Because you're a developer, you know, like if you go up to Alta and you start developing a lodge, the cities, those building codes apply. And something's going on here where the building codes don't apply. And it happens to be scary for us who live here because we're talking about a very steep slope adjacent to the foundation of additional of neighboring structures. And so if Mr. Nielsen's still online, if he can maybe, because up to date, we're just not getting, like very satisfying answers as to how this is working and how the legality is. It's Mr. Nielsen doesn't have the right, he's not given the power to decide when codes are applied and when they're not. The city attorney isn't given that right. The mayor isn't given that right. So that's my question to you. And I appreciate you and you're being forthright about the geotechnical issues, but I want to know about the undergirding basis of the law here, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense, and we're just following the protocols. I have had no discussions with anybody as it relates to the legality of
What protocols are you referencing? What protocols are you talking about
the
here?
process of the application.
And the process of the application is usually it goes through and it's determined whether it fits within the parameters of existing building code, and it doesn't. And so that's where we're having a problem here.
Yeah, well, I think that's
Isn't that the conversation that you have, Kelsey? Isn't that what you do? Determine if it meets the existing building codes and
No, I don't determine if it meets existing building codes.
does that happen later on, or
I determine if it's the zoning ordinance. Title 21A is what I make my analysis based on. The Title 18 is building services and building codes. Those are separate.
Okay.
Planning and building code requirements are separate.
Okay.
Paul can discuss your other questions, Jonathan.
So what I want to say is that the legal issues are important, and I know they're important to you. But as far as us making comment to the Planning Commission, I can say there are concerns that this building may be built on land that's too steep for buildings. So this is getting kind of it's not a variance though. I mean, I don't know how to make this comment to the Planning Commission. I don't know that this is the right venue for that. Although I don't know that you get another venue. Anyway, so that legal discussion is, let's hold it off for now and see if there's something else that someone wants to talk about. So I think Cynthia, you're next. Is that you, Cynthia? You're CB? Maybe your name's not Cynthia.
I'm Cynthia, but I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
Making comments in the chat.
Okay, thank you. CB, SLC Houses. You're a realtor, you have a cute haircut. I'm talking to you. I want you to start talking. Okay.
Okay. I can't quite leave it alone because it is absolutely the elephant in the room. And I think while we have the city attorney on, we need to understand why he has told us that this property owner has a vested property right. The Salt Lake City Planning Code 18-28 defines a vested property right as a right to develop property based on the ordinances existing at the time of the application. Let me finish here. At the time of the application for development, notwithstanding pending changes in the regulations which would preclude the development. That can't be written any more clearly. So what has happened is the city in 1994 made code and regulations that have made a once legal building lot unbuildable. I want to know if the city is just trying to somehow cover up or avoid litigation from Mr. Clifford. I don't understand how it can be any more clear. A right to develop property based on the ordinances existing at the time of the application for development notwithstanding pending changes in the regulations which would preclude the development. So unless this application was made prior to 1994, this is an unbuildable lot, and the city should purchase it from Mr. Clifford, and they should compensate him for his property. Thank you.
Amy, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. Hey, I'm told that Mr. Abraham has had his hand physically up in the air for 20 minutes. So I want to give him a chance to speak. If you can still feel your hand, use it to unmute yourself so you can talk. And then we'll have Sarah George, then Rick Ford. And then, yeah, and then Martha, or actually that doesn't look like Martha, Mr. Wonderly. So is Abraham ready to speak?
You need to unmute.
There you are. Here, I'll ask him to. Mr. Abraham, can you hear me? I need you to unmute your, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you. Yes, thank you. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry about it.
It's okay.
I live at 850 South Donner Way. The drawings that supply to us show that the parking lot is 15 feet from 850 South Donner Way, and the building is 30 feet from South Donner Way. Now, if you are constructing at a slope of close to 60 degrees, what structure, the structural stability of the building will be affected? And is there any provision the Planning Commission has made to safeguard the structural stability of the building, its residents, and also the people employed in construction? You know, these slopes, the slope restriction is apparently waived in this case, which I don't agree to. So when you do a construction like that, is there any vibration monitoring? How, when you have heavy equipment, is there any vibration monitoring to safeguard our building? How will the noise be mitigated? And how will the dust control measures will be made? I want to know all those things.
Mr. Clifford, can you speak to that, or
Sure.
Kelsey?
No, those are all good questions. Thank you, Mr. Abram. You know, this is a challenging site. Initially, as I hope you read my construction process phasing and how that would be done. Initially, there's going to be rough grading, and there's going to be.
Mr. Clifford, real quick, where's that information that your construction?
That was in the answer that I supplied
Okay.
Kelsey last week. And
Okay.
I went point by point as related to some of the concerns that were raised.
Have you just sent one list of answers to Kelsey, or two? Or just the one, Kelsey? Okay, I emailed that out to everybody.
So
I'll post it somewhere so you guys.
It generally describes the construction process and how things will occur. Of course, this is going to be dependent upon ultimately, how this is designed and how it's actually going to be built and how it's going to be permitted. But initially, there's going to be rough grading, and then the development of the of the parking deck will occur. Once the parking deck is in place, then a crane is brought in, and all of the work and materialman and all the activity will be basically on the parking deck. So all the staging of materials and so forth that will be dropped off will be staged on the parking, and then will be put into place by the crane. And of course, all the appropriate monitoring and the dust mitigation that's all part of the SWIP plan that gets supplied to the city. And we'll be, of course, following all of the obligations that relate to that.
But the public doesn't get a chance to review it. How you have said nicely all those things that it will be done. How will the public know about it?
Well, one of the things that we want to do is, of course, keep all the neighbors current with the progress of actual construction. And my intent was to provide through this council all the preparatory work, what to anticipate, when things were going to happen, and so that you would understand what the progress of the project is and when it was anticipated to be completed. So that'll be forthcoming, through this community council.
Mr. Abraham, also, I want everyone to understand that the normal process is that the public does not have input during the construction period. That's overseen by the construction experts and inspectors and all of those kind of things that the city hires that are professionals who do that. We don't normally get a say in construction that's happening near us. That said, real quick, if Paul Nielsen is still on the call,
Yep, I'm here. I'm happy to answer your questions, Ms. Burrows.
Yeah, I know. You've got Salt Lake City Council going too, so thank you for doing both of these. I don't know if you heard some of the questions from.
Well, I heard something about some backdoor deal between the city or myself or my office and the developer, and I assure you that I have never met this developer. I've never had any conversations with him. I also understand that there have been some things said about vested rights, and yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to handle this question in the best possible way that I can. But there's a thing in the law called the common law, and that's law that's developed through the courts. And there is very, very clear law on this circumstance. There is a case out of Salt Lake County that deals with 30% slopes, and the fact that a 30% slope ordinance in Salt Lake County was developed after a lot was subdivided, and the court said that the property owner had the right to develop the lot in accordance with what was developed, what the lot was before the 30% slope came into play. You can shake your heads at me. It doesn't really matter. If this matter is challenged, I assure you that we're going to make an argument that is the most legally correct argument.
Okay, Mr. Nielsen, I wonder if I can't resolve the legal question. I don't think the Planning Commission is going to do it.
And we're not going to do it here tonight.
Right, we are not. No one is going to be satisfied with that conversation. Is there another, what's the next thing to do for people that are concerned about that legal idea or decision? Do they need to get attorneys and sue somebody, or what's the next thing?
People can consult their own legal counsel.
Okay, there you go. There's the answer. I can't resolve it. You're not getting an answer from Paul that's satisfying. If you're not, the applicant can't resolve it. So there's your answer. I will make a note that there are concerns about the legality of building on this slope. I'll make a note that that's a concern, because it seems to be a concern for everybody. And I think underlying that is the concern that it's not safe. It's not safe for the building that will be built, and it's not safe doesn't improve safety for your buildings. So I will
Let me
make a
be-
note that, go
Let
ahead.
me be clear that what I have said about 30% slopes is not addressing any of the safety issues, any of the engineering,
Right.
any of those other issues. This is, it's apologies, but it's essentially thoughts in a vacuum. This is exactly what the court dealt with in a case dealing with 30% slopes in unincorporated Salt Lake County. There are other issues. There are a lot of other things that have to be addressed before development can be approved. This is one solitary issue.
Right.
I appreciate you, the fact that you've pointed out that we're not going to resolve the legality of this tonight.
So my point is that I will make a note that there are concerns about the legality of building on this slope, and that the reason why people are concerned about that is because they think that the rule was made not to build on this slope because it's not safe. That's the point that I'm going to make in my presentation, which is fine. If you need to pursue this legal issue, and I feel like a lot of you make pretty good arguments. I have found that like the powerhouse of the state is kind of lives at the top of Donner Way, because there are 100 professional geologists that live up there, and 5 professional city planners, and 1 million attorneys. And it's amazing the amount of intellectual property that we have living at the top of at Donner Way. The answer is that you'll need to consult your own attorney to pursue the legal issue, besides what I said that we would make that comment. Next is Sarah George and Rick Ford. I think
Right.
you're on the same screen.
Our team.
Yeah.
We are. First of all, Amy, could you pull up the map that you had on the agenda, that the plat map?
Yeah. It'll take me a second because I'm not also a Zoom expert, but I can find it.
And maybe while you're doing that, the map shows the road, the one-way road, coming all the way down around the south side of Oakcrest Gardens, 900 Donner, and reconnecting onto Donner Way. It does not. It actually goes into the building, and there's about a 15-foot drop from the street down to the building entrance. If the fire and the city, or the fire and the police reviewed that drawing, which you had highlighted in blue there, then that is not accurate. And the only access is in fact from the circle.
From the cul-de-sac.
Right. I think they're intending to access it from the circle. Is that right, Mr. Clifford?
Well, let's clarify. Look, if you can hold that drawing right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me make it bigger.
And if you could.
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
But the fire department may be.
So you'll note, and this is not, of course, a highly detailed drawing here, but you'll note that coming off the exit driveway from Donner Crest, from Donner Way, the driveway for our property comes in at about between 35 and 65 feet for the upper deck. That's the only section of the drive which would be considered a two-way. And
No,
that's where the fire trucks would enter and approach the parking deck. And that's at virtually the same.
I think that's an access as well.
But my question is, when the police and the fire reviewed it, were they aware of that? Or did they see this drawing and think that they could come around the south side of Oakcrest Gardens? If so.
Oh, no, I know there's only one point of ingress and egress on this property, and it's off Donner Way.
But that's not what this map shows. The map shows 2 connections to Donner Way, and that is incorrect.
And if they reviewed this drawing, maybe they should review it again.
I just see this one. What are you
That's the
guys
only
seeing?
one. What-
That's the only one.
The driveway going all the way around the south end of.
No, that's the drawing. The drawing that you're seeing there, as it relates to Oakcrest Gardens, is only there as a call it a place picker. This is not the scale. This was just simply a overall layout.
Okay.
And you can, if you go online and you see the detailed drawings that are being proposed and the various elevations, you'll see how the parking deck integrates with that driveway.
Mr. Clifford, I don't think our question does not actually directly have to do with your project. Our question is, this drawing is inaccurate in showing that the private driveway goes from the cul-de-sac to the south and wraps around the south end of the south tower of Oakcrest Gardens, and it appears to reconnect to Donner Way, such that there's a 2
Oh,
points.
down here?
Yes.
Oh, no, it doesn't, right? It goes into your parking.
That is correct.
And then you come back out right.
So the question is
Yeah.
really for Kelsey Lindquist.
Do the police and fire department know that there is not a second point of access
That
there?
one.
Yeah, I believe the fire department knows because they can't go through the property, which is why they're requiring suppression, as well as the building. The majority of the building isn't accessible from the eastern elevation, but I will reroute it tomorrow morning to ensure that they know that there's only that one point and get new.
This
new
just goes into the parking. Yeah, this doesn't
Mhm.
hit a road here. You're right.
Yeah, I will reach out to them in the morning to ensure that they are aware of that.
Okay, and then our second point is that there are 4 stalls on the circle. And I go in and out of that many times a day. And those 4 stalls are almost always full with service people or visitors, primarily to 850 Donner. And I think there are 27 units there. Earlier, I heard adding 12 to that circle wouldn't have an impact, but where are the service people and the visitors going to park for 860 Donner? I think it is going to have a significant impact on the ability of people to get in and out of both of those buildings at the bottom.
Mr. Clifford, I believe you said that you're not taking out any of the parking spaces that are currently on the circle.
Nothing changes as it relates to the off-street parking, and all of our parking, our visitor parking, is in the parking on the parking deck.
So you have spaces for your residents, spaces for service,
For all the residents,
spaces for visitors.
we are over parked as it relates to the required parking.
How many spaces do you have?
Oh, I'd have to go back and review it. It's been some
Not
time.
counting the 70-ton fire truck.
Well, I could count them, but Kelsey probably knows that number better than I do. She's the one that's been reviewing it.
Is that a satisfying answer to you, Sarah? Oh, go ahead.
I think we have 32 spaces, do we not, Kelsey?
I actually believe you have 30. So they are overparked for the site. They are meeting their maximum parking.
Sarah and Rick, does that satisfy you that there's no loss of parking spaces?
I think the impact is going to be greater than what is anticipated.
Miss George, I will recount the stalls in the morning since it is late and ensure that it's is 30. And I'll respond via email tomorrow morning.
Okay, Mr. Wonderly, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Clifford, and I hope, Paul, you're still on the line. I think the point about what Mr. Clifford understands to be the legal basis of this comes not from an accusation that there's a backyard deal. I think it comes from the reality that there is no other way to get the legal basis. I think that was then asked, well, what does he understand the legal basis is? Because we're not getting that otherwise. I've asked for an opinion from the attorney. I've asked, chatting while we were here, whether he was going to give an opinion so that we would know what we were responding to and what we were talking about. The case that Mr. Clifford and the attorney rely on is a Court of Appeals case, and that case dealt with questions about whether there's a planned unit development. The slope issue never came up in that case. So we have no real opinion and basis for knowing why they think they can build on a slope that is 30 to 60% steep. It's just crazy. We're counting angels on a pinhead when it comes right down to how the heck can you safely build on a 30-60 slope. There's a reason the city put that slope ordinance in there. And that's health and safety, and that's what the ordinance says. Now, one of the reasons that we want to know about why the slope is, I think Mr. Nielsen is basing his opinion on whether or not it's vested. I have researched the vesting. I have spoken with Mr. Nielsen about the vesting, and it's very clear, and Mr. Nielsen agrees with me, and I hope he's on so that we can talk about this, that vesting is subject. Vesting does not apply outright and 100%. Vesting is always subject to regulations and health and safety. And the slope ordinance is the primary thing that it should be subject to. 21 says that it is subject to code, 18 being the code. So I think if we're going to have any kind of a intelligent discussion about this, we ought to know why. The only reason we're getting from Mr. Clifford why is, well, that was done before, but we don't know what was done before. And we'd like to find out what the legal reasoning is. So we either get a declaratory judgment or we get a public opinion. I think Mr. Nielsen refuses to give a public opinion. There may be, I'm not sure, there's a process to get a public opinion from the IRS. There may be a process to get a public opinion from the city attorney. I don't know. I'd have to check on that. I would hope we could get a public opinion without having to go through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wonderly. Paul's position before was to consult your attorney, which, Mr. Wonderly, I believe you are an attorney. So I'm going to say best of luck on resolving the legal questions. Like I said, we'll make a comment about it in our statement. And with the understanding that the legality of building on a 30-degree slope is that you're concerned about the safety of it. One other thing, I want to make sure I'm not missing any comments here. So I have comments about the legality of this and the undergirding of that is that building on a slope that steep is dangerous for the properties that are all around that, all around there. Also that there's some concern, I have heard concerns about the utilities, and that's one of the items on the approval criteria. It's G. Existing or planned utilities will adequately serve the development and not have a detrimental effect on the surrounding area. There's been concern that if you have to have holding tanks for your sewer and then pump it back up to the street is where to connect to the sewer, there's concern about if those tanks rupture during an earthquake, if they destabilize the hill maybe and further threaten the foundations of the buildings around there. I know you made some kind of comment, Mr. Clifford, about maybe joining with some of the other buildings there to make a change to the utilities.
I've had preliminary discussions about rerouting the entire sewer into a collection point on Emigration Canyon Road. They have a collection, and you probably are familiar where that collection is. That would require an easement across the most easterly boundary. It's a shared boundary between Donner Crest and the dog park. And that falls into the domain of the city public works and parks department. So that's a question. If the easement were to be granted, public works has a preference, of course, to eliminate any future possibility of an overstressed sewer system with a pumping system that would be wholly inadequate in our view. So I think there's a way forward in that regard, and I think it's a really strong and reasonable solution to the sewer question.
That answer will come later. When would that answer come?
Well, that will require that'll occur during the permitting process.
Okay. There have been some questions about the sustainability of this project and solar power for it.
Well, we're going to be applying for LEED designation and green requirements, and that is the primary focus with this project. There's going to be, because of the nature of the development and how it integrates into the hillside, the geothermal aspects of energy use and how it's used to heat and cool the building is going to be a very, it's a strong focus and will be our primary concern. We don't have all the elements of solar, but geothermal, because of its connection with the hillside, we're already evaluating that, and we have heat pump generation of energy use already on the preliminary evaluation list.
So I think Mr. Pearson wanted to speak about that. So go ahead and unmute yourself and you can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, actually, I'm wondering how you're planning to get USGBC lead for this building, as given the impact on the natural environment, specifically on the riparian areas, as in Glen Park and the urban forest and the watershed. So as someone who's a lead AP, who's gone through the approval process with USGBC, this doesn't make any sense to me that they would actually even give you the time of day. So good luck with that if you think you can just throw some solar panels on there and call it green when they impact the natural environment as such. I'm also curious how the city accepted this purpose statement, specifically that you needed to meet these objectives that are lined up in 21A 55010. And we have open space and natural land. Obviously, we're destroying some open space. Historic preservation, that doesn't apply. Housing, providing affordable housing doesn't apply here, as we know how much profit's involved. The mobility, it's obviously not creating improved mobility, so they didn't apply for that. And they mentioned the sustainability. But specifically under Part E on sustainability, we're talking about the creation of a project that exceeds exceptional performance with regards to resource consumption and impact on natural systems. So the impact on natural systems is not an or, it's an and. So I'm wondering how the city, is accepting of this, of meeting any of these criteria, and how the developer thinks he's going to convince the city that he's meeting these criteria, and how he's planning to get lead for the project.
I can address planning's position. The application is still under review. And so the objectives will be analyzed within the staff report to the Planning Commission. Applicants can submit written narratives indicating that they meet objectives, and the full analysis will be conducted within the staff report.
Mr. Clifford, do you want to say anything?
Well, I believe in hiring people who are a lot smarter than I am. And all of this goes to the point that we started with, and that is additional studies need to be done. I rely on Bill Gordon. I've known Bill for 40 years. Reevely is our structural engineer. Van Borm and Frank is our mechanical. All these folks are highly qualified and much smarter than I am. And they know how to make things work. So as far as the lead designation, as you know, John, Van Borm and Frank is probably one of the leaders in that area, as well as their under consultants.
Okay, thank you. Kelsey, can you help us figure out what the slope actually is, how it's calculated? Are you calculating that, or is it calculated by Mr. Clifford's surveyors or architects or whatever?
Yeah, it would be calculated by Mr. Clifford surveyors by a topo study that he would submit. The average slope is how we measure building height in this district. So he does have to average some of the slope to provide that building height. But we, as the city, we have to trust what's provided by the applicant.
Okay. So go ahead.
I just might mention that the engineer, the surveying group, McNeil Engineers, is our surveyor. McNeil is highly regarded. They've been around for 60 years. They're the ones that made the calculations for us. So.
Well, and my understanding, my experience has been in our hilly neighborhood that the calculation of slope is extremely complicated, and
yeah, it is.
It's been explained to me, but it's really complicated. So for any of us to walk out and look at a property and say, I know what that slope is, unless we're one of those engineers, that might be impossible. So I think we're wrapping up our meeting here, which does not mean that public comment is wrapped up. This means that Mr. Clifford has reached out to us to say, can you gather some comments on this and suggestions? And those are also things that we've been asked for. When I've been to planning commission meetings, they say, and we say, there's not enough parking, this is a really busy street or something. Then the question is, well, what do you suggest? And we can say that we think you should require a parking space on the property, something like that. So suggestions are also accepted and asked for. Kelsey, I hope that you'll, I know that a lot of this is by rules, but I hope that we'll have a little bit of time to write our official letter with the East Bench Community Council statements. I'll make sure. Thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to note, I've contacted the admins to leave the open house up so that my contact information associated with this project and the link that you provided, Amy, is still available. It'll be left up on our website until I tell him otherwise. So feel free to reach out to me at any point, provide public comments, questions, concerns.
Great. So the East Bench Community Council will wrap up our comments and send them in so they can be part of the official packet. Just a second, Mr. Clifford. And unless you're waving to say goodbye, which you can't yet, we'll submit those to Kelsey so they're part of the official record. The public comment is open. And as soon as I find out when that public hearing is, I will tell all of you, and you can make public comments at the hearing. Your comments are limited to 2 minutes at that time. But hopefully we've given you guys a chance to make your point, to ask your questions. I know you're not satisfied with all of the answers, and I completely understand that. I didn't really expect for this to answer all the questions, but I hope that it helps. Mr. Clifford, do you want to say something?
are all the chats a matter of personal public record, is part of the recording as well?
The chats, my intention is to send them to Kelsey as part of as a
So
comment.
the road to hell is paved with good intentions. What's going
I
to happen?
saw that in the chat. I saw
What's
that.
going to happen to the chats?
Well, I mean, I can send
I'd
them
like
to
a
Kelsey.
copy of the chat, if you don't mind. I would love to have a copy. I've been trying to take screenshots of the chat so I can have a
Yes.
record of it.
When I record this
want to
meeting,
know what's going to happen to the chats, not the intention. What's going to happen to the chats?
Mr. Schmidt, I do my best to follow through with what I say I'm going to, and I generally do. I have a decent reputation for doing that. My intention is to send the chat. Okay, Mr. Schmidt, I'm talking now. When this meeting is over, I can send the chat from this meeting and the previous one, which as I told you, I figured out how to put on YouTube. I can send that to Kelsey, and it can be part of her record. And that is my intention, and I'll do it, whether or not you believe it. That's true. Anyone can save the chat. Everyone go ahead and save it. You're all welcome to, but I'll send it to you too, Mr. Clifford. Thanks for coming. Thanks for making your comments. You're welcome to continue to send them to me, to continue to send them to Kelsey. Kelsey, even when that open house goes down, are they still emailing you comments? Yeah. And I've seen Kelsey's responses. She answers questions when you ask them. She's very professional and knows stuff. I mean, I part of the answer you got today of consult your own attorney is not the answer you want, but this isn't a court room, so that's the way it is. Okay, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop recording now so you can all sign off. Goodbye.